back to DJZK Tutorials. We're back inside Capture One 22, and today I am going to show you how I like to quickly edit my studio images against a white backdrop, and the adjustments that I make within Capture One before I export them out and they're ready for the client. So we're going to be working with this image in front of me here, and we're going to turn it from this raw state into something a lot more finished, like that. So let's begin. Okay, here we go. Here is our raw image, and obviously it was shot in against a white backdrop with the model leaning up against a white cube. And the lighting setup for this was incredibly simple. It was a single, unadulterated, unmodified light from a high angle at a distance, basically full flash style photography against the model. And the best part about that is that you get these really nice hard shadows and really nice differences in geometric objects, faces, the parts that face the light versus the parts that are in shadow. Okay, without further ado, let's go up to our focus tab up here. I think this is sharpening. Basically, this is the way that I've arranged it so that I work through a process where I adjust all of my sharpening and clarity. Then I go through to color, and then I make fine color adjustments, and then I can add layers if need be. So first thing I like to do is let's actually crop this image so that we've got a little bit more attention on the model. And I'm not going to talk too much because I do tend to waffle quite a bit. Once we're happy with that, let's go into sharpening. And these are the values that I tend to use. You can use other values. These are the ones that work for me. An amount of 300 with a sharpening radius of 1.2. I tend to not take it any further than that because if you wind the wheel all the way up, you can see in this focus window over here, it's not a great effect. It makes it look like it's been taken on a low resolution iPhone camera that pre-sharpens everything. So let's take it back to 1.2. Come down to clarity. Now, clarity, the easiest way to explain it is the clarity slider will basically increase the contrast in the midtones and make big things look sharper. The structure slider will make smaller, finer details look sharper or softer, depending on which way you slide them. So clarity, for this one, I'm actually going to reduce the clarity. Not too much. I'm going to take down a -10. That gives our model a little bit of a glow, but then I'm going to increase my structure to about 25. And you can see already that's added, it's added structure. It's like a form of sharpening. I'm also going to add a little bit of film grain. I used to hate adding film grain to my photos, but now I've sort of fallen in love with the look. And again, it adds a little bit more definition and depth to particularly my studio images. So we're going to stick with a silver rich film grain, impact 35, granularity we'll leave at 50. Great, so now we've got everything sharpened, ready to go. Let's move across to our color tab. Now our white balance, I'm actually just going to do this a lazy way. Let's choose a portion of the image I find it tends to work better if you actually select a portion of the image that's grey rather than white. Click, nothing's happening. There we go. And it's a very minor adjustment, and you can see all of our whites are being brought into line if you look up at the histogram here. You know what? I'm actually going to white balance for her skin tone, so I'm actually going to bump it up a little bit, and because I've got OCD, I like everything to be a nice round number. Now that has knocked all of our colors in the histogram out of alignment and our whites out of alignment. They're now going to be warmer than they should be, but I'll show you how to correct that in a moment. Our tint. This is sort of like, I tend to sort of guess a little bit with this. The only thing I can't stand is my image is looking too green, so we're going to bump that up a little bit. That looks about right to me if I look at her skin tone. Everything for this is obviously for the skin tone. That's probably the most important thing in this image, unless of course you were shooting for a clothing brand, in which case the clothes would be the most important thing. Exposure, I'm going to leave till last because that's a very easy adjustment. I just want to get all of my colors right. So I'm going to come down to firstly the Curves tool and make some adjustments in the RGB. I'm going to stop talking and actually just adjust by eye so you can see how I do it. Very, very minor adjustments. Don't want to take anything too far. And you can see obviously that's having an impact on the image. And you can bump these with the arrow keys just if you want to make very fine adjustments. Effectively, we're just adding a little bit more contrast into the image, a little bit more definition. Let's come across to the Luma Curve, which is probably my favorite adjustment to make. We're going to bump up those whites. That's about right. Just a lot of shadows. Let's bring up some of the shadows and boost. How are we looking? That's about right. I think that's about right. Maybe that's a little bit better. You know what? Let's drag these back down. Just have the very, very most minor adjustments. And we're actually going to come back up to the exposure tab now. Now I want there to be a little bit more. Let's bump up the exposure and get it to the right exposure. So I'm just going to nudge that by pressing my, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Let's keep saturation at 0. Exposure. Let's take that up a little way and get that white looking nice and bright. And you can see, if you look down here at this curve's histogram, you can see that our whitest white is now lining up with our top curve's anchor, which means that we've almost got at some point in the image a pure white. And look, as I drag my cursor over the image here, you can see the numbers up here. Remembering 255 across the board is perfect pure white, so it's sitting about 254, 253. That's pretty much bang on. Let's take it all the way. Right, okay, happy with that. Again, you know, this is all trial and error. Let's fiddle with the contrast. Yeah, I like that. What happens if we bump the brightness up? Tend to make my images a little bit brighter than I think they need to be, just because most monitors that people will be viewing photos on are quite dull. So I like to accommodate for that so that they still pop on a variety of different monitors, not just my nice iMac monitor. Let's take that to 10, nice even numbers. Yep, I am pretty happy with that. Now we're going to come down and make a couple of adjustments in our high dynamic range setting down here. What we're going to do, I think we'll probably leave the highlights, the shadows, I think. And look, this is just the way that I do it. You can pretty much do all of these adjustments, high dynamic range adjustments in the Curves tool, but I find that Capture One's actually built there's more finesse in adjusting these rather than coming into the Curves tool and adjusting it within there. Okay. Yep, that looks about right. Let's have a bit of a play with the highlights, see what happens. I'm pretty happy with leaving that one at 0. Now Haze Tool, this is a funny tool. Sometimes it works for your image, sometimes it doesn't. I'm actually going to probably bump that up to 15. I think again it just sort of adds a bit more contrast in the midtones, so it gives us a richer image. Okay, let's come back into our curves, and it's all a balancing act. Once you've made one adjustment, you go down to another, then you go back, then you go back. It's like you just sort of play around with it until you got it right. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move on. So now that we've got that, the last adjustment I'm going to make within the color tool is the vignette. Now most people would traditionally think of a vignette as adding dark corners to an image, and you can do that if I drag the slider down. But what I've been doing more recently, because there tends to be quite a bit of light fall off in the corner of my images, I actually create a a negative vignette. So I actually bump the white up in the corner of the images. That's probably taking it too far. Let's go to 0.3. And that way, as you can see by the numbers, the color RGB readout at the top, as I'm dragging my cursor across the image, we've roughly got a backdrop that's sitting at about 250, which is kind of where I want it to be. Our box now is bumped up to 255, so that's pure white, and I'm relatively happy. Now, as it is, you know, I could go in and do some airbrushing now and get rid of a few little bruises and a couple little marks, and the image would be good to go. But I'm not entirely happy with it, and as you'll remember, we adjusted the white balance so that her skin tone was perfect, but that has meant that we have knocked our greys and our whites out of alignment. And to me, looking at them right now, you can see that they're quite hot. So I've got another tutorial on this, but we're going to go into the color editor, choose advanced. We're going to pick the portion of the image that we want to change, the color that we want to change, click on the gray. It's selected. It's made a selection. Let's see what it's selecting. Okay, we're still getting some of her skin tone in there. Just drag it down so that we're just selecting the portion that's affecting the white. And you can see with this toggled on, the view selected color range toggled on, you can see that there is quite a bit of warmth in that white that that is that way because we've adjusted the white balance overall for her skin tone. I'm still catching a little bit above her eyebrow, but I think that's probably about right. Let's see if we can make sure that we get everything in. Obviously, highlights in the middle, shadows on the outside of the curve. That's what we want to adjust. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's toggle that off. And all we want to do is reduce the saturation. And you can see instantly, if I toggle that on and off, look at the image, the backdrop of the image, you get that warm, distracting tone in the whites. Turn that back on, completely removed without affecting her skin tone. Now, with studio lights, a raw image will tend to be quite a blue-white backdrop. Use exactly the same process as this. Come in, select the blue in the whites, and you can just reduce the saturation as I did just there. And there we have it. That's pretty much it. Now, like I said, you can go in and adjust the layers. You know, you can heal some spots, some marks. There might be a bit of lint or fluff on the backdrop. You might want to come in and fix up that little corner there. But as it is, that is pretty much ready to go. And now I can go up to the export tab and export it however I see fit. So just revising, we first started in the cropping tool, and we went across to the sharpening, made all the sharpening adjustments. Then we made all of our color adjustments, particular focus on the curves adjustment and the exposure and the white balance. And then we came across to make our final color adjustments in the advanced color editing tool. If you want to review the changes that we made and look at the raw image that we started with, press Y. And you can see there's our raw image, and that's what we've completely finished with. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below.